download this, runtime, which is about like 1 megabyte in length. So they download that, and then they act like a node for that particular rollup or parachain. So it's a very elegant design in a way. So enough talking. So I'll sort of interact with some of the chains in Polkadot ecosystem, and you get an idea of like how much technology breakthrough we have achieved in blockchain space. So let's go here. Not the assembly. All right, so the new interface for like Polkadot.js, it's because people confuse that with like a Polkadot wallet. So we had to be explicit saying, hey, go use Sub Wallet or Talisman or Nova Wallet if you're using like a mobile device. But let's go to the developer interface now. All right, so let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so I said like Polkadot is this relay chain, right? So if you go to parachains right here, you have the list of chains, each producing like a block, and then they're being like validated like with the Polkadot validators. So let's switch to one of the parachains. So I said Bridge Hub, right? So let's go here. Let's go to the extrinsics, and then so here what you're seeing is what we call a palette. You can think of this as a module or like a smart contract that has been heavily customized. So Ethereum Light-Client implementation is sitting within the runtime of this particular blockchain. So the field is like open. So Akala, it's a DeFi chain. So if I go to their palettes, so if I go to the extrinsics and then try to look at their palettes, so you have like an aggregated DEX, you have like a DEX Oracle, so everything related to like decentralized finance. So the other favorite thing that I show usually is this parachain called Bitgreen. I don't know if they're with the Polkadot ecosystem yet, but they have interesting palettes here, which is like carbon credits, like general storage. So you get the idea. Like you define like what your blockchain or app chain should be doing, whether it's like hydration. So this is like the go-to place for DeFi on like Polkadot. And there's also like Moonbeam, which hosts like Stellar Swap, which is where a lot of like DeFi happens as well. So there's Mythos, which is like the gaming chain that I mentioned about. So you can also look at like the network activity. So how many NFTs were issued and how many are burned. So it's not a ghost chain. So it's just there's a lot of activity that is happening across like all these like multi chains uh, that Polkadot has, and all of these transactions are being validated by Polkadot validators, and then they're finalized on the parachain end using the shared security that Polkadot has, right? So now if you're interested in like runtime development, then you'll be like focusing on this part. Okay, so you'll be building like these custom palettes, custom modules with a bunch of calls. So you'll think about uh, a level deeper than writing a smart contract. You'll have to understand what the runtime complexity of this function is. You'll do some benchmarking and then sort of deploy this onto your chain. So it's a different way of like implementing things. It requires some learning curve, and that's why we have to have this dedicated sessions, or we have Polkadot Blockchain Academy where people actually sit for like 4 weeks and try to understand like all of this and get a head start in runtime development. So you can see like why there is an entry barrier, but once you cross that entry barrier, your opportunities are limitless in a way, right? So I mentioned about frequency, which does a little bit of decentralized social networking protocol implementation. So they have like palettes to handle all of that. Okay, good. So let's go back to the presentation. Um, all right, so I hope by now you understand, what Polkadot is, what its technical design decisions were, and then we have this parachains ecosystem that is trying to cater to different like Web3 use cases. But still, one of the key complaints that we keep hearing is like, Polkadot has no users, Polkadot doesn't have a good developer experience, Polkadot doesn't have good wallets, which I showed you is not true. They're looking at the wrong wallet. So you just have to download the latest wallets that we have. So we keep hearing all of this. We understand, and we want to improve on that front, right? So we want to make Polkadot technology stack more accessible to to the existing Web3 ecosystem. So this presentation, is crafted with that in mind. So depending on like what you're good at, like at developing, you can choose a specific field or area within Polkadot ecosystem to contribute to bettering uh, Polkadot as well as Web3 in general. Now, yeah. So at the end, you have to decide your platform, whether your application is going to live on a browser, will it be on a mobile, or will it be a standalone app on desktop, whether you want to choose smart contracts. So there is this thing within the ecosystem. We heard that 90% of the para chains need not have like their own like chain. Most of the functionalities they were implementing, it could have been implemented as a smart contract. So we hear that feedback. Okay, so you need not launch an app chain for your idea. If it could be done with smart contract in an efficient way, then do a smart contract. So we don't want to push you to develop like an app chain for it, right? But you do not need app chain in some points. For instance, a smart contract execution in EVM. So the way it works is for every instruction, it keeps checking if there is enough gas to execute the next instruction, right? So it's like an unnecessary overhead for executing blockchain's transactions. Why? Because Ethereum has no concept of like trusted code in a way. If user is deploying a smart contract, they need to have enough ether to execute it. So runtime development like sort of takes away that assumption, and then it's like, hey, you benchmark your function. If your function is taking I don't know 0.001 millisecond to execute, and that's the worst case scenario. So I'm going to give you a prepaid balance, this 0.001 execution time. You are free to like just run the transaction without ever having to check whether you have the gas or not. So all these tiny design decisions that Polkadot took, you know keep adding to the performance, but also add to the confusion of like people who are not familiar with these concepts, right? So runtime, it gives you that levels of blockchain control and then customizability. Fine. So, and then if you're even further interested in like Polkadot architecture and its core, design principles, its core protocol, then you could explore this option as well. So you can become a Polkadot core developer. So you'd be contributing to one of the repositories of like Polkadot SDK, whether it's like, building these palettes or building like this roll up framework, how parachains interact with like Polkadot. Yeah, so there's a lot of like room there as well if you're interested to develop like core protocol. And finally, there's tooling, right? So we built this blockchain infrastructure, we need tools to work with this infrastructure. So that's what these tools take care of. And I can't emphasize this enough. Like you have to listen to Sean Taprizi, who is like one of the Polkadot fellow, part of like the Polkadot technical fellowship, works at Parity. He has this amazing, outlook on like blockchain, Web3, and Polkadot in general. And he also delivers like very resourceful talks. So I would say his presentation on building on Polkadot is very resourceful. So if you like to check this out, and if you see him speak about like the slides, I think I've added that link as well. So please do watch it. So yeah, and web development libraries, right? Like if you're planning to do some web development, so Polkadot API or PAPI, this is part of like the hackathon bounty. So there's $5,000 bounty set on using this library. So the idea is that Polkadot JS API, it's there, it works. I just showed you how to interact with chains using Polkadot JS API. But the thing is, there's no active development for that API. So now all the active developers are engaging in perfecting this library. So now we are at a juncture where a lot of Polkadot applications use still this legacy API. We want to switch to this new API, and that change is not very easy to to sort of enforce because like we're in a decentralized ecosystem. Everybody chooses like their own thing, right? So this hackathon, the reason we put a bounty on this is that we want to encourage people to start exploring this new library. It comes apparently with a lot of improvements, but we need to hear that from you as developers. We don't want to be in our echo chamber and think that, yeah, hey, this product is cool, but we want you as a developer to be able to distinguish between like what features are being exposed in this API versus this one, which one works faster, which one is well suited for your application. We want to hear that story, and that story is part of like the hackathon submission. So we're interested in hearing that and sort of improving Polkadot and Web3 as an ecosystem. So there are plenty of tutorials to get started. So I've given all those links. I'll spare some time for you to explore it later on. I won't click on any of these links. And there's also a Polkadot dApp template. So basically, as the tweet says, you can spin up like a sample Polkadot dApp within 5 minutes. So check it out. So that's the GitHub repository for that. And again, like in the hackathon guidelines, you'll see that usage of AI is encouraged. So we are not discouraging people from not using AI. So we want you to use like AI tools and sort of explore all the possibilities with building on Polkadot. So feel free to plug this into like your AI tool, whichever one you're using. Try to prompt it to build something with like this API, maybe a governance platform or like I don't know, staking platform. Give it like templates and the check like what can be built with this API. Fine. So if you're like a hardcore like Rust developer and then you do not want to like even look at like JavaScript or TypeScript libraries, there's a way for you to build like web applications just by using like Rust. And the tool you can use is called SubXT. So this is a web application that I personally developed at like Web3 Foundation. This was more of like a weekend project. So uh, because none of the mainstream wallets were including this vesting dot like option, this is something that's of interest to people who received dot in locked format, right? So I just like created this interface so that people could just select an account on which they can unvest the dot. So this whole web application was built with Rust and Wasm. Um, and if you're interested, like I've provided some templates as well. And you can do more with like SubXT. And yes, if you're like thinking of ideas to develop, people have curated them at this like website. Again, like we're a very decentralized ecosystem. Many people drive like many initiatives. So you've heard like Open Guild earlier. They're doing some stuff as well. So there are different channels through which like you can engage with like Polkadot ecosystem. So this is one of the inlets where you can find some reasonable ideas to tinker with. And yes, so we are at the contract development, right? So this is where the huge bounty is sort of set. So let's see what's coming to Polkadot. So now, previously, when we had like smart contract development track, we encourage people to develop them on one of the parachains. So either Moonbeam or Astar, or yeah, there are, or Akala. So there are few chains that were supporting like smart contracts, right? So but none of them like natively execute on Polkadot protocol, and this is changing soon. So this framework is already live on Polkadot testnet. It's called Westend. So the way it works is you can write a Solidity code, smart contract and Solidity, or you can also use like a Rust-based smart contract, which we call Ink. So there'll be a hackathon like webinar on Ink as well later on. So the way it works is it compiles it into this bytecode that is executed on a virtual machine, which we call Polka VM. So it's not EVM; it's a different virtual machine using RISC-V architecture. Uh, it should definitely improve the performance. So, for instance, if you have a smart contract, Solidity smart contract running on EVM, and the same Solidity smart contract you port it and run it on PVM, compare like which one is more efficient. So the answer that we are expecting is PVM, right? So that should be the unique selling point for these biggies like Uniswap or Aave to consider even deploying to like Polkadot. Why do we have to switch to this like new way of doing things? So we have to show that there's a uh, something positive here, something unique, and one of the things is the performance improvement. So the idea is that if you're writing Solidity code, you know, whatever is happening behind the scenes shouldn't be your headache. The Polkadot developers should take care of like all of this tooling, all of the integration, in such a way that it should feel like you're deploying on either Ethereum or you're deploying it on one of the Ethereum L2s, right? So that's the level of developer experience that we are trying to bring to the table here. And again, like your input in sort of bootstrapping smart contract platform on Polkadot is very crucial to us. So we want your input, and that's also part of like one of the deliverables of this hackathon project. So if you want to learn like the backdrop of it, I encourage you to watch this talk. Uh, but you can also wait till day after tomorrow. So Cyril will actually go through this talk with you with a lot of updated info as well. Yeah, so we've done some benchmarks. So it looks like PVM interpreter as well as PVM like recompiler. So it's always performing efficiently. So we want to test that out in a production environment. So recently, even like Gav sort of tweeted this. So comparison of EVM and PVM, we are looking at hundreds and thousands of improvement in the gas limit that can be processed within a block. So if you're interested in learning more, you should look at the latest implementation that Gav is working on. It's called Jam. So this will be the next major upgrade for like Polkadot protocol. But in any case, so it's going to use this Polka VM, which is going to be used for native smart contracts execution on Polkadot Hub as well. So yes, so there are for the workshop, I encourage you to look at Solidity. If you want to use Ink, that's also fine. It's also part of the prize pool. So we dedicated equal share for both these contracts, but we are very interested in like Solidity smart contract deployment on Polkadot. So I have some links for Ink tutorial as well. And yeah, so runtime development, again, the focus is like zero knowledge runtime, right? So and I understand like most of you don't have the backdrop knowledge for developing runtime using Polkadot SDK, but if that is where you want to go, so I have few resources for you here. So you can go to the code school and then try the substrate kitties like tutorial. So that gives you an understanding of how you you write the code. How do you create storage items, how do you create these function calls that you will be able to call from outside, how do you have these events that are recorded on the blockchain, how do you have errors that are displayed to the user when something goes wrong, how do you have hooks where you specify, hey, when the block is being built, on initialize, I want to run certain code. So there's a lot of um, you know base level control that you'll get with this runtime, and it takes a little bit of time to get used to it, but once you get used to it, you'll see the beauty of it. You're able to build applications that are a lot more powerful than smart contracts. So yes, so if you're already familiar with like runtime, you've did some runtime development like before, and you're sort of interested in what's coming next, I would say you should check out this presentation by Kian during Sub-Zero Reset last year. So he has gone through a very detailed session on what improvements are coming next, so, which should probably excite you as well. Yeah, and then this is something that I personally delivered as part of like Polkadot Blockchain Academy lecture. So if any of you is interested in launching an app chain, a parachain on Polkadot or Kusama, or even like one of its testnets, feel free to talk to me. We also created like a workshop during Sub-Zero Reset, which if you go through, you get like the whole idea of how to do it. So my answer is, launching an app chain is not that difficult. So we are also, I'll also add like this new thing. It's called Polkadot Deploy. So that lets you like launch like a parachain in a couple of hours. So a lot of progress has been made in this direction. So yeah, if you're interested in exploring this in some time during this hackathon, and if you hit any like roadblock, like you can reach out to me. So yeah, so this parachain, once it's launched, it should be able to purchase like core time and block space through these markets right there. Um, so this is like one of the biggest entry barriers. So to be able to register your WebAssembly, right? So I told you all the Polkadot validators have to fetch your runtime cartridge and load it into their console. So that comes with a storage space, requirement, right? So the whole Polkadot network state, it has to have your parachain code stored, and that comes with a cost. So probably this is like one of the entry barriers, like if you want to launch your parachain, but we're trying to lower these deposits so that you'll be able to launch an app chain if you wanted to in a much more seamless manner. Yeah, there are plenty of templates to get started from. So if you want to have like an EVM compatible chain, Open Zeppelin has like a template for you, and they also have like a generic template. So you need not write everything from scratch for the runtime. So you get all these libraries that you can use to to launch your app chain. So yeah, the two things that you need to care about is like the business logic of the chain and the genesis state of the chain, right? So in the genesis block, the initial block, you have to set, hey, which cryptographic account will have the sudo access on my chain, which accounts will have some preloaded balance of the token, will my chain have a treasury account, what kind of uh, you know state information that you need in the blockchain at the block number one. You put that in the genesis state, and then the WebAssembly file is going to contain the state transition function, which contains all the extrinsics that I've shown, all the palettes, all the storage items, the way to store them. I think all of that is embedded in here. So once you register that, and you should be able to onboard your app chain, and then the app chain sort of produces the blocks when the onboarding is finished. So yeah, a lot of this I think I don't have to go through in detail for at least this hackathon. So I would say like Polkadot does this information transfer between this rollup parachain and like the relay chain in a very efficient manner. So it only sends the data that is actually changed in the Merkle tree of the state, and the data that hasn't been changed, you just preserve the hash, and you just send this Merkle tree to the Polkadot validators to sort of like validate. So there's a lot of test tooling, like, mainly for cross-chain testing. So if you're building like cross-chain applications, you can, make use of one of these tools and monitor the cross-chain messages and the logs. Um, so for more ideas, like, if you're like a core developer or wishing to go into the core development of like Polkadot protocol, so this link will get to you the wish list of like developers, and then there is a wish list of users, right? Like, so users may have like a completely different priority of what needs being implemented on Polkadot protocol. So if any of those like click to you and then you want to spend your time developing them, it will not only fetch you uh, you know um, a good edge in this hackathon, but also it'll enable you to get like a lot more funding through other means as well. But the point being, all of this runtime development, we are interested in using that for zero knowledge, right? So if a zero zk code is embedded in the form of a smart contract, we know the zk is like very expensive. It might benefit from being executed in runtime, or even I don't know, off-chain worker. So we have like this architecture that's open for you, the way you'd like to design a zk application using Polkadot SDK. So we're interested in seeing what progress you'll make on that bounty. So yep, so there's also Polkadot developer like bounties repo, and then there is this Polkadot open source stack. So this, I can actually click it on it. Let's see what I have. So instead of so if you have like an application area in mind, you don't have to start from scratch. So all of these projects were funded by Web3 Foundation. So we ensure like they put their code online, like as an open source. So you can fork any of these like repositories and then start working from there. So you don't have to reinvent everything and redo all the code. So you should be able to do this. So this link sort of gives you uh, yeah, that. And yeah, so we also have like a very active grants program. So if you're interested in checking out like the grants that were accepted previously, all of that information is open. The reviews are open. The application is open. The feedback is open. So everything is on the GitHub repository. So this gives you an idea of like what we as Web3 Foundation are looking for. So if you're planning to apply for a grant on maybe DeFi or social media or something, check out like applications that are already uh, but approved, and that gives you like a template to get started. And recently, the Polkadot Treasury also approved this fast grants bounty. So one of the things I'm going to do for this hackathon is, when we see a project that has like potential, uh, the Web3 Foundation will personally recommend that project to this fast grants bounty, where you could get you know 10,000 up to $10,000 within like 2 weeks, right? So the idea is that you get this capital fast so that you can try out your ideas even better. We can also match you with potential like venture capitalists, VCs, or like funding agencies to take your product and then give you an on ramp for like a quick launch of your product. So yes, so that's what I want to highlight. So the hackathon actually doesn't end here. This 4 weeks, you can view that as like a step. towards like much more opportunities within the ecosystem. And we do have this vibrant governance. So Polkadot is like the biggest DAO out there. In fact, like the whole Encode Club hackathon is being funded by the Polkadot treasury money. So yeah, so the treasury has like so this distribution. So we have like stables, we have like dot, and depending on like the needs of the proposer, the referenda, so they're going to ask for single time payment or multi-stage payment. So the amount of work that went into sort of perfecting this DAO style like governance on Polkadot. So Polkadot is setting an example for how on-chain governance can be done. So that didn't come easily, or so we had to work our way through in the last 3 years to get to where we are. Um, so this OpenGov Watch is a website that lets you explore Polkadot governance as well, and they have office hours. So if you have a project and you think that Polkadot um, community might be much more receptive of it, you can reach out to OpenGov Watch. They will provide you guidance with how to approach the Polkadot community. And yeah, so there's plenty of like education opportunities as well. Encode Club is great, but if you want to go even further, we currently have Polkadot Blockchain Academy running in Switzerland. So it is all paid for, like, the hotel is paid for, you get like meal vouchers. All you have to do is come to the location where this academy is being offered. So you'll have access to most of the experts within the Polkadot ecosystem, spending time with you 3 weeks to teach you different things about like developing on Polkadot, right? So, and for those of you who can't commit like 3 weeks of in-person time, so we are also bootstrapping a lot of like online education programs. So PBAX is like one of those initiatives we did in January. So if you're interested, there's one cohort that is starting on April 14th. So you can check out like PBAX, Polkadot Blockchain Academy, and then you'll see it. Yeah, this is what I was mentioning about. So there's a new cohort that is starting on April 14th. This goes from the basics like cryptocurrency, not cryptocurrency, cryptography, um, game theory, economics, blockchain, and then you jump into like what's Polkadot, its architecture and its governance, and so on and so forth. And yeah, so for those of you who are really sold on like Polkadot vision, if you want to be part of like the Polkadot Technical Fellowship, it comes with a lot of perks. So you can actually earn salary from the treasury. So literally, the Polkadot treasury is going to run a payroll for you. So the salaries range starts from like 10,000 for like rank 1 to 200,000 for like I think rank 4 or rank 5. So yeah, so Polkadot does offer in a decentralized way for you to like contribute to the ecosystem and be rewarded for it. And we're even pushing the boundary of like Web3. So in the future, so I told you Polkadot runtime is much more efficient than smart contracts. So now Jam is going to make it like even more efficient by running your application as a service. So so to fully understand like what I mean by service, I think I can't do justice to it yet, but um, yeah, Gavin would actually demonstrated running this game called Doom on chain, where every part of like the game is running on chain, right? So that's a remarkable achievement. It's not running as like a, I don't know, like off chain process and then committing something to it. The whole game itself is running on chain, which is a remarkable thing. And that's what like Jam is going to be like once in the future. The entire Polkadot relay chain architecture and design, it's going to be embedded as one of the services that runs on Jam, to just to give you a scale of what's coming next. And here's my contact details, so you can add me on the socials, you can add me on LinkedIn. uh, over the over the next 4 weeks, I'll try to interact with all of you, who's trying to reach out to me. So there's this Encode Discord server, there's this Polkadot Discord server. uh, Feel free to register to all of them and then sort of start this conversation going. And with that, I sort of end this talk and see how everybody is doing. That's a lot
There's
of
lots of
information.
questions. You're a popular man. So
Okay. Yeah, I rambled a lot. I hope I
you've
made some
rambled
sense.
coherently. It's not rambling. So yeah. How do you want to do this? Do you want me to read them? Do you want to cherry pick yourself? Um, yeah, go for it.
You can read them for me. I think I don't know where the questions
Why
come from.
not? I get to rouse the old vocal cords. All right. So some of these have been answered as we've gone along, such as your background. You did that immediately. Extra point of using multiple partners. Not formally, but if you do it in a neat manner that is for the benefit of the overall application, you minimally make yourself more open to more potential bounties. And if you do it well, it's good. What's the most popular project on Polkadot? Well, you talked about gaming. I guess there's two ways, both at the protocol level and the application level. Go on, tell us maybe your favorites on Polkadot at the moment, or the ones that are gaining popularity.
Yeah, I think I really like what Hydration did. Like
Yes.
anybody who's into like DeFi should check out like their runtime primitives. Like they've managed to solve a lot of problems that are encountered with like typical smart contract based, DeFi applications. Um, they have like this dollar cost averaging feature. I think they're doing something to not let this MEV thing be an issue, like when you're issuing like transactions. Yeah, so I would, yeah, if you're familiar with DeFi, which is what like most of the like Web3 people are familiar with, I think you should take a look at like what Hydration built on their platform. But if you're like thinking even further, I would look at the DSNP implementation by frequency.
Yeah.
So DSNP is like decentralized social networking protocol. It's so they had to do a huge extensive search on like multiple blockchain platforms. In their forum post they mentioned about 40 of them, and then they narrowed down on Polkadot for a reason, because that's what gives them a lot of flexibility. So we have this concept called as chain extensions or transaction extensions. So you could actually extend a transaction by adding additional input parameters, and then the chain API sort of decides, you know uh, to do some pre-processing and then sort of submit it on chain. So a lot of customization is possible, and then they chose that. So personally, for me, the favorite project is Frequency, and then there's Mythos, which is enterprise grade project. So yeah, all of those are cool projects. And then once we have native smart contracts, we would like to see, one of the popular names
Yeah.
come and execute on Polkadot, and blow the performance out of like the charts, and we can get started there, I guess.
That'd be great. So there's a question about the most valuable pre-existing skill set. I think let's call it broad technical skill set, language-based skill set. I guess the answer is going to be Solidity, right? Or what are you going to say? What is the most valuable one that the Polkadot ecosystem is looking to acquire right now?
So right now, absolutely. Like we want to be on the world map of Solidity developers. So far, we've been ignored by them because we don't have Solidity smart contracts that can be natively deployed on Polkadot. So, so we want to be one of their compilation targets going forward. At least this year, we just want to people experiment with, hey, deploy on Polkadot and see what happens, right? So what do we get out of it? Can we do something cool like, do a cross chain call with like a smart contract, which is not possible on an Ethereum or L2. So I'd like people to think of like Polkadot as a place to explore Solidity smart contracts and expand, what they can achieve with Solidity.
Nice. How does Polkadot's modularity compare with Celestia?
Yeah, Celestia is mostly like a DA thing, right? So we provide like execution sharding. So we're like, you bring your program, you bring your game, you bring your cartridge. We're going to plug it into our console and then play it for you. So we're not making any assumptions on how customized like your blockchain runtime is. Whatever it is, here are the preset limits. So you just need to follow the API